We might just jump in and get started. So awesome. I'm excited to take you through some training for our upcoming update today. I'm going to cover a whole bunch of different things. What I'd love for you to do, please, is feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A function here in Zoom. You'll find the Q&A button down the bottom. If I spot the questions while I'm going through the application, I'll answer them immediately, assuming they're relevant for what I'm looking at and talking through at the time. Otherwise, I'll leave them to the end of the webinar. Fantastic. So let me just share my screen and we'll jump right in. Great. So I've got the chat and the Q&A open so I can see your questions and any kind of conversations as they're coming up. So definitely shout out if you're having any issues or if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please submit them. I'm sharing my screen now and I'm really hoping you guys can all see it. If you cannot see my screen, definitely drop me a message or say so using the Q&A function. Today, what we're going to cover is we'll start off by talking a little bit about VXT's new Help Center. Then we'll jump into the changes that are coming with this update, starting off with some of the more high-level, broad design changes to the applications. We'll talk about some of the new functionality like bulk SMS, and then some of the new functionality around administering and managing your companies in VXT. We'll touch on some of the billing changes, which were already described in the admin email, which you've all received. And then finally, we'll look at the new call flow builder and call queues. At the end, if there's some time, I can also touch on briefly some of the things that we'll be adding after the update coming later in 2024. So let's jump to VXT's new Help Center first. So you'll find VXT's Help Center at support.vxt.co.nz. Now, this is going to be a really valuable website to bookmark in your browser and to share with your team. What we'll find at the Help Center are a lot of articles that are really carefully made that include instructions for how to complete pretty much any task in VXT. So if I wanted to know how to turn on Do Not Disturb, or how to make a phone call, or even just how to record my first voicemail greeting, I can find articles to explain those processes step by step here in the Help Center. But not just articles, each article, pretty much every article, comes with an accompanying video. If I want to complete a task, I'm not quite sure how to do it in the update, I could come to this Help Center. Of course, if I see the task that I'm looking for immediately on the front page, I can click on it right here, or I could search for the task. I want to block a phone number in VXT, so I'm going to just search for block. I hit enter, and here are some results. Top one looks good, block a phone number. So now I'm in the article that's going to explain to me how to block a phone number in VXT. Of course, I can read the step-by-step guide for how to complete that process, or I can watch this video. And the video is going to be probably better than reading the article, if I'm honest, because it shows me exactly where to go in the application. Now, all of these articles and videos are written and recorded for the update. So a lot of what I'm going to cover today is already covered here. And if it's not already covered here in the Help Center, it will be. We'll be continuing to add resources in the lead up to the update tomorrow. And after the update as well. So if there is something that's important to you that you can't see in the Help Center, send me a message and I'll get it added urgently. Cool. So we're going to move on now to actually looking at the update. But the first thing I want to do is we're going to start off in the current app before the update. We're going to make a quick phone call, talk through it a little bit, and then we'll move to the new application and do the exact same process, just so that we've got it fresh on screen, and we can look exactly how the same thing looks in the new update. So I'm going to start a phone call in VXT. Now, this is a process you're all probably super familiar with. I'm just going to search for a contact by name. Oh, sorry, I just better disable the integration that's currently connected. I'm going to search for a contact by name again. Oh, that contact was from the integration. Look at that, silly me. That's okay. Is that phone number? It will be right here. Cool. We're going to put that phone number in and start the call. When we're on a phone call in VXT, as you're super aware, I'm sure, all of our controls are in the bottom right-hand corner of our screen. We can hover over those buttons to get a sense of what they do. Of course, we can conference call, transfer the call, we can take our own notes during the call, we can put the call on hold. I'm recording this call, and we can mute ourselves as well. In the current version of VXT, calls show up at the bottom of our screen in this big long bar here. That will change with the update. And so let me show you how. We're going to end this call now. Just like you're familiar with, at the end of your call, we can review any notes we took during the call. We didn't take any today. And if we wanted to go and look at our conversation history, we're going to find that in the Chats tab in the top left-hand corner of our screen. Here's our conversation history with this phone number. And if we wanted to make another call, of course, we could just click the call button at the top of this conversation. The call's been recorded, nice. Or we could click on dial to go and make another phone call. So let's jump to the new application and see how that's changed. So we'll start off with some of the high-level design changes. There's no more dial tab. Yeah. Instead, there's a dialing bar at the top of our screen. That means if we go to another page in VXT, like Chats, which has been renamed to Inbox. So this screen is where we'll see all our conversation history, and it looks very, very similar to Chats. If we go to any other screen, as we scroll through the app, the dialing bar will follow us everywhere. No matter where we are in VXT, we can click at the top of the screen to start a phone call. So we're going to start a phone call. Yep. I'm going to click on the dialing bar and I'll call this contact. When we're on a call in VXT, all of our controls are just as they were in the old application. All of our controls are going to show up on the call. The call looks a little bit different. It's quite a lot smaller. You can also move it around if you want to, but generally we'll just leave it there. I can mute the call, take my own notes, transfer the call, hold, record, conference call, open the dialer. Everything works the same way as it always has. Just looks a little bit different. Cool. So yeah, nothing's really changed here. Just the way it looks. Open my notes. I can take my own notes just like in the old application. See who's on the call with me. I'm going to end the call now. Great. Just like the old application, I can review the notes any notes that I took during the call. Again, I didn't take any notes today, so I'm just going to hit done. And then our call has shown up down here at the bottom in this conversation. Let's jump back to the old app just to quickly compare that again. So chats, this is where all of our conversation history lives, is now inbox. It's an identical part of the app, really. The design hasn't changed a whole lot. We've got our conversations grouped by phone number. When we click on one, we can see our conversation history with that phone number. Same. Cool. One of the things that has changed is Do Not Disturb is now a lot more accessible, a lot easier to use. It's now at the top of our screen, right next to the dialing bar. We can click on the Do Not Disturb button right here and turn it on. So I've just turned on Do Not Disturb for 30 minutes and VXT is going to tell me exactly when Do Not Disturb will turn off. You may remember in the old application, if you wanted to silence incoming calls or if you wanted to enable Do Not Disturb, you'd find it under your profile. So in the top right-hand corner, you'd click on your email address, your profile up here, and then you'd find Do Not Disturb in this menu. So that's moved just to make it a lot easier to use. Great. Do Not Disturb can be super valuable, especially if you're in a lot of video meetings on Microsoft Teams or other platforms and you're still receiving calls. It can be really annoying and interrupting when VXT is ringing in the background while you're trying to have a video call. So that's why we made it a lot more accessible and easy to use. One of the other big design changes is that today in the app that you are using right now for VXT, if you call your colleagues, if you message your colleagues in VXT, it'll show up in your chats tab. So here under the inbox tab. With the new update, we have moved all of your internal communications into a different area of the app. So if you have calls in VXT with your colleagues, if you message your colleagues in VXT, all of those conversations will appear on the team tab. So here I can see like direct messaging conversations with all of my colleagues. Here I have a bunch of calling history with Catherine. And we can also message each other. In the future, we'll likely add additional functionality to this area of the app, like group chats or channels, where you can organize the conversations you're having with multiple team members about different topics. Cool. One of the other new features that we are introducing with the update is bulk SMS. So VXT will now support bulk SMS, whereby you can send a single SMS message to up to 60 recipients at once. Later this year, we'll increase that limit to 1,000 recipients. Now let's move on to some of the changes to administration and company management in VXT. In the current application, if you wanted to manage your team, you'd go to settings and you might click through some of these tabs like members. You can see your list of teammates. You can remove them from the company. You can manage your team settings, your billing, and maybe some of your phones. But realistically, there's not a lot of control you have here. If you wanted to change the permissions of a colleague, you can only make them a member with not a lot of access or a full admin. It's not ideal if you want to delegate one specific area of VXT to that individual. Managing call flows on other phones is really hard and doesn't work that well in the current application. So I can change the call flow on one of my colleagues' phones, but it's kind of confusing and doesn't really make a lot of sense. And VXT generally just isn't great for administration today. So what we've done is we've completely overhauled that. Now there is an administration tab in the bottom left-hand corner of our screen. So let's click on administration. First place we'll look at today is going to be analytics. So we'll start off by talking a little bit about how we can use analytics in the new update. So if I click on analytics in the new update, we'll start at the top of our screen. We can select a bunch of settings up here. The first one is the primary statistic we want to look at for our company, like missed calls, ring time, whatever you want to look at. Then we'll select so think of that as a category. Then we'll select the secondary statistic. So we're going to look at missed calls unanswered. For any statistic you're looking at on the new analytics tab, it's going to be clearly defined at the top of the screen. So you don't have to wonder exactly what is VXT measuring exactly here. It's laid out very explicitly. So for instance, we're looking at unanswered calls, missed calls. So let's take a look. What does that mean? Well, unanswered calls are the number of inbound calls that were missed or diverted after having rung a team member for the full ring time. So that doesn't mean a whole lot on its own, but let's look at a different kind of missed call to add some context to why that's defined separately. If we look at abandoned calls are the number of calls where the caller hung up after a team member had started ringing. So a caller rings your phone, they wait for 15 seconds, no one's answered yet. They give up and hang up the phone. That's an abandoned call. The reason we broke that out because it's not really fair to call that a missed call or call that an unanswered call. If you want to understand who are the people on your team that aren't picking up the phone, we'd look at unanswered calls. We can look at the absolute number of any of our statistics or the proportion, so the percentage of the total. When we click on percentage, you'll notice it'll change the definition to refer to the percentage. We can also select the time window that we're looking at, and we can click an option to include calls between team members in our statistics. It's an unticked by default, so we won't include internal statistics by default. So let's scroll down a little bit. We can look at the data by user over here on the left or by phone number on the right. A little bit further down the screen, we can see our analytics graphed. So here on the graph, I can see unanswered calls for my whole company grouped by week. If I wanted to see statistics for a particular individual graph, I could either select them in the list up here. So I'm going to select Luke Campbell. We'll notice the graph has changed. Or I could click on this drop down and select from this list again. Of course, I could do the same with the phone number that I can see up here, our reception line. Again, it's in the list as well. So if I wanted to select it here, no problem. I can change the time period for which this data is grouped. So if I wanted to look at the statistics monthly instead of weekly, that's fine. I can do that as well. Simple. And finally, of course, I can also export this data if I wanted to look at it in a different system, or if I wanted to have it saved somewhere else, I can do that. Let's move on from analytics. We're going to move to member management. So when we're managing our team, when we're managing our staff in VXT, we're going to go to the members page. And on the members page, we can see 3 tabs. We have the members tab, invitations tab, and the groups tab, and we'll go through them one by one. Starting off here, we're on the members tab. On the members tab, I can see all of my colleagues in a list. If I wanted to, obviously, some of you will have hundreds of names in this list. And so you can search the list by name if you wanted. So if I wanted to search for Chelsea, simple, Chelsea's going to show up. Otherwise, I can just scroll through the list here. And if I want to manage a particular individual, I can click on them. So I'll click on Chelsea. Now, when I'm managing Chelsea, I can edit her name. Not going to need to do that, really. And I can see her permissions. So one of the things that's changed with this update, as we've touched on already, is that the way permissions work and roles work has changed. So a staff member can either be a member, which by default would have no permissions. So this a member is able to make and receive calls, manage their own settings, but they can't do much else. Or they can be an admin, and an admin will have all permissions. If we want to understand what a particular permission does, we can look at the question mark, click on it. VXT is going to explain that permission for us. Permissions are useful because maybe Chelsea is responsible for managing some of my team members. And so I want her to be able to review analytics for those team members and understand if people are missing their calls, how many calls people are making, how long are my clients waiting for people to answer their calls. I can give Chelsea permission to view analytics. Maybe Chelsea's responsible for billing, for accounts management, so I can give her permission to manage billing in VXT. If Chelsea's a more technical member of my team, maybe I could allow her to manage call flows and our phone numbers as well. So you can see how these kinds of permissions could be used. I'll save Chelsea's permissions. And now we can see she has access to all of these things. Now I'm going to skip over this quickly, but we've clicked on Chelsea. If I click on phones, I can see what phones does Chelsea have access to in VXT. And if I wanted to manage if I wanted to manage the phones that Chelsea had access to, I could click on them right here. It would open up that individual phone's settings, and I could change those settings, including diverting Chelsea's calls if she's on leave. But we'll leave that for now and we'll come back. When I'm managing Chelsea, I can see all of the groups that Chelsea's in. I can see Chelsea's in the sales group, which I've made, the New Zealand group, and the everyone group. We'll close out of here and let's take a look at invitations. So the way invitations work in VXT has changed a bit. So we can send an invitation to a new user. Say we've hired a new staff member in our company and we want to invite them to VXT so they can join us and start making phone calls. Well, I've already created an invite. If I wanted to invite someone, I'd click on this plus button, but for now, we're just going to click on this invitation, which I sent yesterday. We can manage invitations in a really similar way to how we manage users. And when this invitation is accepted, all of the settings that we have changed on the invitation will also be changed for the user who accepted it. What that means is when I create this invitation today and I invite Luke, who's starting on Monday, I invite Luke to VXT, I can give him particular permissions like view analytics and manage billing, and I can assign Luke a phone to use already for when he starts on Monday. And when Luke creates his account on Monday, everything is all ready for him. I don't need to come in here and change any settings. It's all going to work straight away. The emails people receive when they are invited to VXT are also different. So in the current system, if you send someone an invite, They will open their email, find the email invitation from VXT and click on the accept invitation button to join your company. That works differently today. Instead, if you send someone an invitation, they will still receive an email, but it is purely a notification. So if they don't receive that email, it doesn't matter. They can create their account in VXT and we will automatically identify them as someone you've invited and they can accept the invitation from within VXT without having ever touched their email. So that just makes everything a little bit smoother and easier as well. If you're not sure what I meant by that, just don't worry about it. It doesn't matter too much. It'll just make adding new users easier. Cool. So let's move on to groups. So in VXT, I can organize my team members into groups, and then I can use those groups in other areas of the application. Just as an example, here I have a group of users that are in New Zealand. Just as in the same way, I could create a group of users on a particular team, like sales or administration or consulting. I can then use this group in other areas of the application. So if I'm creating a call flow, where I'm saying when we get an incoming call, press 1 for this group, press 2 for that group, I can use those groups and those call flows. And then if I update this group here, it'll automatically update in the call flow as well. So I don't have to go and change, if I add one person to the sales team and I have 3 call flows which ring the sales team, I don't have to go and manage that in 3 different places. In the future, we'll add these groups to other areas of the app. For instance, analytics. So we'll be able to look at, for example, the statistics that relate to New Zealand, our New Zealand team. Or if we wanted to see how many calls is our real estate team doing, we'd be able to do that. Just to be very clear, this update won't include that functionality, but we'll continue to add these groups to other areas of the app, like analytics, over time. Cool. We'll move on from members now, and we're going to have a look at phone numbers. So on the phone numbers tab, we can see all of the phone numbers in our entire company at once, and we can manage every single one of them. So here on the phone numbers, we've got these 2 tabs up the top. We've got assigned phone numbers. These are phone numbers that are currently in use by people, that are currently being managed by my staff, and unassigned phone numbers, which are numbers that we're not currently using, that aren't assigned to any particular individuals on our team. So the most important ones are, of course, assigned. So if I wanted to manage any of these phone numbers, for instance, we'll go back to Chelsea's phone. I can just click on the phone number here. It'll take me into that phone number settings, and I can change anything I want to. So I can manage, of course, the call recording settings on that phone number. So if I wanted to make sure that all of Chelsea's calls are being recorded, I can enable that. If I wanted to divert Chelsea's calls because she's sick or on leave, I can do that here as well. We've added a simple view for changing what happens when your phone number rings. So this view is going to make it easier for the average staff member who isn't super comfortable with VXT to manage their calls, manage what happens when calls come to them. So for instance, I'm in Chelsea's phone on the calls tab. I can edit what's currently called the incoming call action. So ordinarily it would just be set to ring assignees, which means it's just going to ring Chelsea because she's assigned to this phone. But if Chelsea went on leave, we could select divert to phone number. We could put in the reception phone number here and then hit activate. But we'll just have it ring assignees for now. Of course, if we wanted to manage more complex call flows, we could click on the Call Flow Builder tab. So here, this area of the application has changed quite a bit as well. In the old version of VXT, if we wanted to manage our call flows, we would go into the app, click on Phone Settings, Call Routing, and here are our call flows. We can see them in a list on the left-hand side, and then we can see them represented graphically on the right-hand side. Jumping back to the update, that's changed. We no longer represent your call flows graphically. Instead, they're just here in this list, and we won't see them graphed until we open up the call flow. So I'm going to create a new call flow and just show you what that looks like. We'll click Add in the top right-hand corner. And now we're going to see the call flow in this graphical sense. So here, when I get an incoming call, it's not going to do anything because I haven't created this call flow yet. We'll hit the plus button because we want something to happen when we get an incoming call. We'll select a schedule. If I wasn't too sure what a schedule did, I could read its description here on the right-hand side. So when I select a schedule, our call flow is going to decide which path to follow based on the schedule. So we'll click Schedule. We'll configure that schedule 9 to 5, Mondays to Fridays. Looks good to me. Now, inside hours, I just want it to ring me. I'll click plus again, ring users, assigned users. Yeah, so I guess we're creating this on Chelsea's phone, aren't we? So it'll just ring Chelsea. If Chelsea doesn't answer, we're going to send it to voicemail. Great. And outside hours, I just want it to go to voicemail as well. So I could either click send to voicemail here, or I'm just going to click connect it to that send to voicemail, which I've already added. Cool. I'll call this call flow business hours, and I'll share it with everyone else in the company too. Why not? They can use this. Great. Let's activate this call flow. So now Chelsea's phone is using the call flow that I just created. We'll jump out of here now. So for phones that are assigned to individual members on our team, we have two different types. We have direct lines, which are only assigned to one individual, and all of the conversation history and voicemail, SMS, etc., goes to that individual and is associated with them. We also have shared phone numbers. So this is a different type of phone number. A shared phone number might be assigned to more than one person. And all of the messages, the voicemail and SMS, instead of getting associated to the people who are assigned to the phone, is kind of just owned by the phone. And that makes a lot more sense for things like reception lines, where you might have two members of your administration staff managing that phone number and following up when it receives voicemail and sending messages. I'm not going to go too deep in here, but if we clicked on one of these phones, like the reception line, for instance, we can see the configuration of this phone. Its name is here. The type of phone it is here. Who is assigned to it is here. I can click edit, I can change what type of phone it is. I can make it unassigned. I can make it a direct line. I'm not going to change anything today. Cool. Now, I'm going to click on my unassigned tab. I can see the phone numbers that are not currently in use. I can see what's happening if someone calls those phone numbers that aren't in use. By default, they will divert to another phone number in your company, and you can select which one. And if I clicked on one of these assigned phone numbers, of course, I could turn it into a direct line and assign it to someone on my team. So I can move these phones around between different staff. Cool. We're almost finished. To be honest, going through all of these changes today, guys. So please, if you have any questions, definitely put them in the Q&A function at the bottom of the call. Otherwise, everything I've gone through here is on our help center. And it's nice and edited, so it's more concise and probably makes more sense than me kind of talking to you at 3 a.m. in the morning for me. Awesome. I've got a few questions. So I'm going to pause and take those questions. Will we get a copy of the recording? I believe so. I'm pretty sure Zoom is going to email you a copy of this recording, which will be on demand and shareable. If you don't receive a copy of the recording, definitely just email me, luke@vxt.co.nz, and I'll share it with you. Of course, again, everything I've covered today is on our help center. So in the off chance that we don't get a recording, everything's there anyway. Someone has asked, will our call flows automatically transfer over with the new update? Yes, they will. Everything in your account is going to transfer over automatically with the update. When you come into work on Monday, unless you want to use VXT on the weekend, when you come into work on Monday, the app on your computer will have updated to this new system. Everything will come over automatically except for analytics. So some of these statistics, so for instance, missed calls in the current version of the app that you're using is not equivalent to missed calls in the new app. So it doesn't really make sense to just copy them over. So we won't be bringing over your historic analytics, at least not immediately. And if we do bring over some of your historic analytics like total calls, it won't be immediately. We'll probably bring those over in the future. Will the same functionality work on mobile? Yes and no. As always, the mobile application will have less functionality than your computer. However, all of the main features will be on mobile and some new features will be on mobile. So let me talk you through a few of those. On mobile, of course, we'll have the inbox screen so we can see all of our conversations. We can make calls as per usual. Some of the new things on mobile include the team tab. So the team tab will be on mobile, and we can now send and receive SMS on mobile. That's new. In the past, we could only send SMS on our computers. So we can now do that on mobile. We can now transfer calls on mobile. That's new. In the past, we could only conference call on mobile. We couldn't transfer calls. We can now take notes during a call on mobile. That's new. In the past, we could only do that on our computers or after the call on mobile. Now we can take notes during the call on mobile. So yeah, but there are some things you can't manage on mobile. Not sure if we ever will or how we would add them. Like for instance, you're never going to be able to create a call flow on mobile. That's something we won't add ever, probably. Right. Why are you doing this at 3 a.m.? Good question. It's because we have awesome customers in the Northern Hemisphere, which I'm glad to be up early to help kind of walk through this update. I often work Northern Hemisphere hours to help manage customer support and customer service for awesome customers up in your part of the world anyway, so that's why. Great question. Thanks, Scott. What time will this go live? Yep. So this update will start rolling out at, off the top of my head now, this is on our website, and I'll pop open the article. I think it's 6 a.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. No, 9 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, great. So 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern is when the deployment of the update will start. Now, of course, this is a really big update, and it's not quite as simple as our ordinary updates. So we are going into some scheduled maintenance as we roll out this update, during which time VXT will be unavailable. Another question around integrations. Question is basically, will a particular integration have more functionality with this update? As a part of this update, we aren't updating any of our existing integrations, or adding functionality to any of our existing integrations. Except for a few integrations will have, so some of our integrations, we display notes from the integrated software on incoming calls. Once the call is answered, we usually take those notes away. You can't see them anymore. With the update, some of our integrations, we're keeping those notes around. So you'll be able to see notes on ongoing calls, which are pulled through from your integrated software, like Job Adder or Action Step or Loxo. Now, one thing this update does allow us to build our software a lot faster and easier, because we've improved everything behind the scenes to make it just a lot easier to manage for our team. That does mean future updates will come a lot quicker. So improvements to our existing integrations are on the roadmap for the next few months. And so you will see improvements to the integrations that you use in a short period of time. Someone has asked, can we add our own hold music? Not yet. That is something people have requested for a while, so it is something that we're conscious of adding to the system. With that question, I want to move on to call queues, because it's kind of related. So queues are a new feature in VXT. And let me show you how they work. I'm going to click on call flows. Let me go to my phone. So I'm going to manage my own phone number here. I'm going to change what happens when I get called. I'm going to click on queue. And I think, is it that one? I think I've done this right. That looks good to me. Please ignore just while I'm clicking around, just making sure everything's going to work the way I just ignore what I'm doing right now, please. Okay, cool. Let's add myself to that queue. Great. So I want to introduce you to queues by using it first, and then I'll show you how it's managed. So I'm going to use a call queue first. Great. So I'm a receptionist. I manage a lot of calls every day to my company's main phone number. To make it easier to manage those calls, we've set up a call queue for that phone number. So when I come in the morning, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., whatever, I'll check in to the queue for our main number. When I check into the queue, that means I'm here ready to answer calls. If I go on break, or when I finish the day, I need to check out of the queue so that it's clear that I'm not available to make calls. When I receive a call, when a call comes into that main phone number, instead of like ringing me straight away, that call is going to come into the call queue. So I'm going to call myself now. I'm going to make a call into here. Sweet. So a client is waiting for their call to be answered. So this client, Anduin here, is going to hear a pre-recorded message. It might say, "Hi, thanks for calling VXT. Please hold while we connect you to our support team." Then 45 seconds later, Anduin might hear his position in the queue. Right now, he's of course in position 1, so he's probably expecting to have his call answered soon. But maybe Anduin was in position 6, so it's valuable to hear that. And in another minute or two, he might move up to position 3. To answer this call, I can hit the green answer button. And if another call came in, it would show up below this call in the list. It would show up in position 2. I can see that I'm checked in alone. But if I had a colleague who was managing these calls with me, it would show up as checked in with my colleague's name. So I can answer this call. I'll go ahead and answer that call now. And there we have it. It's just an ordinary call. I can see the call just like I did before when we started this webinar. Same old controls, nothing's really different here. Cool. So basically, this queue makes it a lot easier for me to manage a high volume of calls. If I had 5 calls coming in all at once, they're going to automatically be added to the queue, and I can go through them one by one without it basically overwhelming me. So to manage a call queue, let's click on the admin section again. Now we're going to go to the call flow builder, and let's just pretend that we're creating a new call flow and adding a call queue to it. So move this call queue around so that it's not in my way. So I'm going to create a new call flow, similar to the one we made before. Now I'm going to click schedule, same as before, 9 to 5 looks good. Inside hours, we'll click on the auto attendant. We're going to make something a little bit more complicated this time. If I want it to be set up so if my clients press 1, it'll go to my receptionist. And if they press 2, wrong button, if they press 2, we'll divert the call to our answering service. Press 1, we'll click on send this call to a call queue, and my receptionist can handle it. We could select the queue that we want the call to go into, or we can create a new queue. Queues are basically set up to have, they can have different messages and different users assigned to them. So I'm just going to call this Luke's queue. I'll assign Luke, myself, to the queue, and then we can record a message that will play when a new caller joins this queue. "Hi, thanks for calling VXT. Please hold while we connect you to our team." Great, I'll save that message. We'll add another message, except this time it'll just be a position announcement. Okay, cool. So I've created this queue, given it a name. Luke's going to be in the queue, ready to answer these calls. And when a caller joins this queue, they're going to hear this message. 45 seconds later, they'll hear their position. Position will be announced to them. 45 seconds after that, they'll hear the message again. 45 seconds later, it'll announce their position. 45 seconds later, they'll hear the message again. So it's just going to rotate through these over and over again until I answer the incoming calls. Great, we'll save that new queue. I've been added to a second queue, this queue that we just made, Luke's queue. So now it's shown up here, look, and it has its name. So it says Luke's queue. I'm not checked into that queue now. Obviously, I'm getting a bit crazy having multiple queues set up here. So I'm just gonna delete that one. Let's get rid of that. Cool. Cool. Okie dokie. So, why hasn't that gone away? Fantastic. So yeah, that's kind of how you set up and manage call queues. Obviously, it's quite a new area of the app, a bit complicated, and you won't really touch it too often. This is something, there is a video on how that works. Again, a little bit more concise, might make a little bit more sense to me in this webinar, and you'll find that on our Help Center. That's everything I had planned to go through today, guys. So there's not really anything else that's any other really big changes to VXT. These are the most important ones. Definitely, please do make the Help Center available to your team and watch some of the videos yourself. Yeah, and the update will come out on Saturday overnight.